The war god took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work at Aaron Cambridge.
Hi Eden family, welcome to episode number 3 of our budgeting series that is called Deny Yourself. So if you've been following along, we had one video that talked about budgeting from a very high level perspective, kind of what it should look like, what it should entail. Episode number 2 was about subscriptions and memberships, which that's the one that was last week. And so this week we're going to talk about rearranging and prioritizing. So this is literally the order that we do things in with our clients and really just life, right? Like this is truly how we do it. So let's start with our opening scripture. Our opening scripture is going to be Luke 16:10 through 12. So only 3 verses. Just for context though, this is right after the parable of the dishonest manager. So we always say, get the word for yourself, right? This is a very small piece of a much bigger picture. So let's go ahead and start. So starting with verse 10. So one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? Thoughts, comments? What comes to mind, if anything?
A lot, as always. But the beginning of this, I feel like he deals with the character of the person first. Because it says that if you're unfaithful with a little, then you're gonna be unfaithful with much. And then the same thing with if you're dishonest with a little, then you're gonna be dishonest with much. And we know that this applies to really everything. The character of God, he, whether it's relationship, whether it's how you're supposed to handle yourself, even being single, youth, everything, it talks about taking care of what you have, treating it, whether it's you got a little bit or you got a lot. The way that you treat it though is important, the way that you handle it. So that's, again, there we're dealing with the character, and this particular passage we are talking about finances, so we will stick with that. So the beginning, dealing with character, and then the next line is I think it uses what it says, unrighteous wealth. Okay, so this uses unrighteous wealth, and another translation uses like the mammon. And the reason it calls it unrighteous wealth is because it's talking about like money, wealth, and like property. So the material things. And like we said, we dealt with the character, and then we're dealing with the materials thing. And the reason that it calls it unrighteous wealth is because of the result of these things have driven people to doing unrighteous things. Or the way that their heart is towards it. Selfish. It'll make you do selfish acts. It'll make you do unrighteous thing because you're being driven by these material things, money, wealth, property. If you're unfaithful with the unrighteous wealth, which is the material things, then you can't even handle the true riches. So if you struggle with something minor as money, and you allow that to control you, then we can't even get to the more important things of the kingdom. So, and that's where we harp on, as far as even from the beginning, God gave you dominion over everything. And so you're supposed to have control over it, and it does not supposed to have control over you. So that's truly what I got from it. And I know like later on this passage also goes into the you can't serve both. And so that's also where this is. And like I just said, you supposed to control it. And yeah, we live in a world today that we have seen people do crazy things to either achieve a certain status or to maintain a certain status, or again, selfishness, or really act way out of character for a material thing, and God is just saying, like, if you can't handle something that, again, unrighteous, something that doesn't even matter in the kingdom, then we can't even go deeper over something so small. We can't even go to the next level. So
yeah. I feel like these verses are so literal, right? So one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. So if you can steward over something small, then you can be trusted with more, right? And that just reminds me of what we always say, where it's like, the issue is not your income, right? It's what you're doing with what you're making right now. And so that's what immediately comes to mind. And then it says, and one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. And to your point, if you're throwing it all down the drain, right? Like or whatever it is, if you are glorifying, let's just say, like everyone feels income is the issue. If you're glorifying money, even if it's $10 an hour, why would a holy God who cares about nothing else other than your soul, give you the very thing that's going to lead you to destruction? So if you idolize,
becomes an idol.
Yes, if you idolize the $10 an hour, right? Or you idolize, like you said, the material things, I'm not giving you 500,000, like, right? Because why would I do that? Especially, we're even saying this from a worldly perspective, like we're naturally sinful, but think about God, right? Like how righteous he is, how holy he is, how genuine his heart is for us. Why would I do that? Right? If the end goal is your soul, I am not going to give you the very thing that you will self-destruct with, right? And so to your point, it's that heart posture towards money, which we've talked about before. And then it says, and if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? Now so I made a comment in one of the other videos about how as Christians, we should really be some of the most hardworking people. We should be the people that other people look at, right? Like worldly people look at and say, because we've gotten these sort of comments before, like, I don't get why you do all this extra stuff at work. They're not even paying you for it, right? Can you steward over what doesn't necessarily have your name tied to it? Maybe not your face tied to it. Maybe it belongs to someone else. Maybe it influences somebody else's reputation. Maybe it's not your organization or your business, but someone is on the other end of it, right? And so if my heart posture is that, if I don't directly benefit from this thing, there's only but so much I can give you, right? And if it's like, I'm only willing to give when I can take, that's what this is talking to, right? Like if I can't trust you with something that belongs to someone else, why would I then give you anything more, right? Because like you said, it's your heart posture, right? And it also reminds me of, I think there's like a quote, and it probably is worldly, to be honest, I can't remember, but it's this concept that like you really know who people are based on how they treat people that can do nothing for them, right? And so it kind of goes along with that. But the point that I want to drive home with these scriptures is the prosperity gospel. Because the prosperity gospel will take some of these scriptures out of context, right? Like we talked about this in our first ever podcast about what the dangers are with the prosperity gospel. And not that the Bible doesn't talk about prosperity, but it really talks about stewardship when it talks about prosperity, right? So when I give you these things, what kind of character do you have towards them? What is your heart posture towards them? And then based on that, then we can move forward. Or if we need to go back, right? Because again, your soul is what matters. And so just what came to mind was, it's scriptures like this that the prosperity gospel will not talk about, right? Like the fact that it's not about God wanting you to be a multimillionaire, right? It's about God saying, whatever you do have right now, I want to see what you do with it. I want to see what your heart posture is towards what you do have. Or are you just going to wake up every day and complain, right? Are you going to put that discipline in, right? So that you're not a slave to these things, so that you are a good steward, right? Okay, here's a little bit more, because now I know that you will be my hands and feet, right? And so money is addressed, but not in the sense of, God wants every Christian to be, right? Like, oh, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. No, it's not about you. It's not about us, right? It's about his work. Like, can I give you, are you doing my work with what you have? And if you're not, why would I give you more, right? But if it's 10 cents, whatever it is, right? Like, we're not talking about specific values. We're talking about your heart posture. And so if with $10 an hour, you are faithful and you are the hands and feet of God, right? You allow him to work through you. Here's a little bit more. And now here's a little bit more, because you're doing what I called you to do, right? And so anyway, all of that came to mind. But yeah, that's what came to mind. And just those few scriptures. Did you want to say anything before I kind of go into what we're talking about today?
No, just saying, like, it's just interesting that to address this, he opens up with the character of it first, because it's like if you're unfaithful, then that's gonna affect how you handle something. If you're dishonest, that's gonna carry over into your handling, and I just think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's the whole walk, right? Yeah. All right, so today we are talking about reprioritizing, reorganizing, kind of shifting things around. And so there's kind of really 3 points that I want to just kind of open up with, and then we'll go into each point and kind of elaborate more, okay? So point number 1 is going to be assess paycheck ratios. If you don't know what if nothing comes to mind, that's okay. We're about to talk about it. Point number 2 is going to be planning for what we would call priority or large expenses, right? So we're going to talk about why it's important to prioritize rent and mortgage. Like, it makes sense, right? Even from a worldly perspective. But how does that being a priority affect how I'm going to budget and what plan I'm going to put in place? And then the last point we're going to talk about is just why. Like, why are these 2 steps really important before we get to like the full action plan? So let's start with 1, which is assessing our paycheck ratios. Do you want to kick off with something, or do you want me to just kind of from a high level talk about the points that we have?
The paycheck ratios, as y'all heard me say, and I echo it again, that living paycheck to paycheck is an issue. And one thing that you can do, again, it's very rare that we would suggest an income change, increase, or whatever, because there's a lot of things that you can do that can change your paycheck to paycheck situation without increasing your income. So this is one of the things where we talk about the paycheck ratio, where you know what your income is and you also know what your expenses are. And so the first thing that we look at is making sure that you have a well-balanced amount of income and expenses, so that you don't have everything coming out in the first check. And because there are ways that you can either you can carry money over to the next check, or you can save money for another check, or you can change your expenses, because a lot of these companies allow you to change your due date. You have control. They have like 3 different due dates. You can have it come out in the beginning, the middle, or the end. And since you do have that option and that control, you now can decide this expense that's coming out on the 3rd, I have mortgage, and some of your higher things will come out there. Hey, I might want to move this expense to the end of the month. And now you can easily, by doing a few switches like that, you can go from being in the red or going paycheck to paycheck in the beginning of the month to now it's well balanced. And it's like, I have some left over in the first check, and now I can, move that to the second check. And also, so that's one of the things that we like to do, is take your expenses and see if there's a way to even it out, so that you don't have 75% of your expenses coming out on the first check, and you only have 25 or the remaining coming out on the second. And just something simple like that can relieve pressure from, I got paid Friday and Saturday, I'm having to use a credit card for something, and then that's where we're going to return into that cycle, and now you're behind on the credit card or whatnot. And we really, again, we push credit cards, but that should not be your main source of paying stuff. The credit card is supposed to be used responsibly. We talk about that, but yeah, using balancing your income and your expenses, so that is well balanced.
Yep. So practically what that looks like, right? So we talked about kind of putting the budget together. We last episode took some things out of the budget that we decided are just not good for us. It's not worth taking, using money for that. So practically what this looks like is next to each expense, we would want to put down, like literally, I know one of the spreadsheets that you use literally says which paycheck it's coming out of, right? Like either the date itself,
the due dates,
the actual due dates, but then assign it to a check, right? So that you understand when you're looking at it, what that balance actually looks like. And then you're going to calculate your total expenses per paycheck, not just from a monthly perspective, right? But like you said, all right, if you're bi-weekly, which I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, most people probably are, right? To your point, am I red in the first paycheck, meaning I don't make enough income in that one check to suffice for all of the things coming out on that check, right? Is that, to your point, one of the things that you can do is see if you can move some of those due dates around. And then, basically what I said, right? Each paycheck should be in the green. If not in the green, move the due date when possible to make all paychecks green. It does not benefit you to have a paycheck where you can't even save, where you don't even have a personal allowance, and then have a check that's just in the surplus. And what that reminds me of, not to get off track, is like taxes, right? Because people look forward. You always say this. People look forward to tax returns, but all it really means is that something's off with your taxes, right? Because it's money that you should have been making throughout the year that the government held on to and is now going to refund it back to you because it's yours. And so we want to get to a place where it doesn't matter when you actually get paid, right? Because everything is steady across the entire month. And that's regardless, whether it's bi-weekly, if you get paid every week. What else is there? Some people are like literally first and 15th, like if you work for certain.
They do that.
Yeah. All right. So that was the first point. So point number 2 is to plan for priority or large expenses to be paid in advance. Do you want to chime in real quick, or do you want me to just...
No.
Okay. All right. So why do we actually say this, and what am I even talking about, right? So you made a comment earlier that for some people, their first paycheck might be a little bit more expense heavy, right? But it depends on that person's mindset, right? Because maybe my rent is due on the 1st, but I really know I have until the 15th. And depending on the month, I might get paid like on the 14th. Right? So I might just be like, you know what? I'm just going to wait until the 14th because I know I truly have until the 15th before it's like a real issue. And so I feel like we've seen this before where it's like, well, this is an expense that is non-negotiable, right? Like you need a place to stay, a place to live, and it's not something that you would want to get behind in, right? So we try to account for those things on the front end by saying, yes, even if technically you have until the 15th, it needs to be like a paycheck or 2 actually before that, right? Because you don't know if you might have an emergency. You don't know if your washer and your dryer, we've been there, right? Like you don't know when these things might give out, and you don't want to be in a place where it's like, well, now I either have to go to the laundromat, which there's nothing wrong with that, but when you have a washer and a dryer, you're not expecting those things, right? So you wake up one day, you're already waiting until literally the last minute to pay your mortgage or your rent, and now your washer and dryer is out, and now you have to figure out like, okay, what am I gonna do, right? And so the purpose of this is, one, let's not wait until the last minute. It's just not a good habit, right? And also, again, we're talking about that muscle where it's like, hey, this is a non-negotiable. So let's just put that money away early anyway. And if emergencies do come up or some, surprise expenses do come up, you're okay anyway, because you've already counted for those things that are non-negotiable, right? So again, this helps in case of emergencies, and it's also a safeguard to prevent essential expenses from being late. Anything you want to chime in with there?
No. That's the importance of emergency fund. Like I said, if something does go out unexpectedly, you have that emergency fund there, and it shouldn't interrupt, like you say, your everyday expenses. So you should be able to take care of that emergency, and then you are going to build that emergency fund back up throughout the course of however long it takes you, weeks, months. Depending on everybody's case is different on what you can put back into the emergency fund. But yeah, that's great. And the purpose of the emergency fund.
Yeah. So practically, how you do this is, again, when possible, move expenses to an earlier paycheck. So anything that, even a car payment, I would say is one of those. If you have a car payment, it should be one of those that you consider. Like if you're paying it right now last minute to the point where sometimes it's a couple of days late, even if it's okay with the bank, what we're trying to say is it shouldn't be okay with you, right? So again, you are taking control of your finances, and it starts with your mindset. So let's not wait until the last possible day to pay some of these things, right? So when we are rearranging and reprioritizing, take those non-negotiable expenses, probably rent, like we said, maybe a car payment, anything like, if you have kids that go to daycare, those things that are just non-negotiables and you have to pay anyway, move them up. Move them up if you can. Let's not put ourselves in a situation where I don't know if I have enough for my child's daycare, anything like that. And again, one of the other recommendations is, and maybe you can speak to this if you have anything, is splitting expenses over several paychecks. So you may not actually, I think you called it like carrying over or something like that in the beginning when we opened up, but whatever it takes, right? If your mortgage alone, right, is more than what you make in one paycheck, then we need to start pulling a little bit of mortgage money from the prior 3-4 paychecks, whatever it takes, so that every time you get paid, it's healthy. That's what we're gonna do. It doesn't only have to be, I only get paid, and it's just perspective, right? Like, yes, you may only get paid 2 times in a month, right? But it doesn't mean that's how you have to set up your budget. If you know that, hey, this expense is just so large that I don't ever have one paycheck, whether it's early or not, to cover the expense. Okay, maybe I need to take out, $350 from every paycheck before that it's due the following month. So I'll let you chime in because I feel like you're better with that. But it's definitely a way. I want to make sure we're not saying that, everyone has a paycheck that covers all of their expenses. No, you just have to play with the math to put yourself in the green, as we call it, every paycheck.
Yeah, and this is where, we don't talk before, and this is why a lot of people give up on budgets, because there are a lot of budgets out there, and it's like a one fit all type thing, and that is not the case when it comes to budgets, because everybody's case is different. Your expenses are different, your income is different, when you get paid, all of that is different. So this is where your budget have to be crafted for you and tailor-made just for you, unique to your situation. And yeah, we actually have done this with clients where, like we say, mortgage is one of the big expenses where, not everybody have you're gonna make a check that is gonna cover your entire mortgage. So what we would do is, again, craft the budget to put us a month in advance, and then what you would start doing is splitting that mortgage. And you would take half of it in one check, and then you would take or craft your budget that you're taking half in one check and the other half in the second check. And then by doing that, now you want to set up a cycle where you're always ready on the first or whenever that is due. You're always like a month ahead.
Yeah.
And yeah, like we said, it's a budget has to be tailor-made, and it works for everybody. Like a budget, everybody should have a budget, but again, just be careful with trying to Google and trying to do one method that is one method is not going to work for everybody. And they might do something where it'll work for 80% of people, but we know that there are some special cases out there where, this type of budget or method is not going to work for you, and you need to have a specially tailored budget just for you. And that's where something you got to get crafted with the numbers, and it's still possible to do it to make that budget work, doing things like that for those large expenses.
Yep. All right, and then our last point is really why, right? Like, what is the goal with the 2 points that we made prior? So the first one was to assess your ratios, how much you're actually bringing in per paycheck versus how much is going out for that specific paycheck. And then what was the second one? The second one was planning for priority expenses in advance, right? So why? And I'll cover it really from a high level, and then you can chime in. But the goal here is that we should be able to save, to give, and have a personal allowance from every paycheck. That is one of the main reasons that it's important to have that balance, where you're not like super duper struggling, eating only rice and noodles or whatever it might be for you on one check, and then the following check you're like, yeah, let's go out to eat every day, right? Like we have to get to a point where all of our life, right, like every day, right, requires some sort of discipline, because that's when it becomes routine. You don't even think about it anymore, right? Like but yeah, so saving, giving, and having a personal allowance from each paycheck. So again, from a practical level, whatever you are saving, even if it is $5, it's a consistent $5. It's not $5 here and no dollars here, right? Or $50 here and no, because that you don't ever get to train your entire self to this new lifestyle. Like you always say, it's a lifestyle change, right? So it allows you to save consistently no matter what that amount is. And right now we're not worried about the amount, right? Who cares if it's $5? Who cares if it's 10? We're building that muscle, right? And we're making that lifestyle change. So we want to be in the green every single paycheck so that, oh, okay, I'm paying myself, right? Every single time that a paycheck comes in. The other thing I wanted to cover, and this is definitely more, again, this is a Christian series, right? We're not trying to appeal to the world, but welcome. If anyone wants to come over, but you should always have money assigned to giving and generosity. I mentioned in one of the other podcasts that this all works together, right? And we're not going to get into the logistics or the legalism and or just the in-depth, because I think it's good stuff to talk about, but it's just not the place or time here, about whether it's like money set aside for tithing, and if it is, how much, what percent, is it separate or together with giving, if you're driving past someone and you give it, we're not getting into those sort of things, but we are saying all of it, right? That it matters that you're in the green every paycheck when possible, because if God tells you to move, you need to be able to move. And that's really the bottom line. However he leads you to do that, and based on biblical standards, but you need to be able to do it. And so that's one of the things that, again, building that muscle where it's never, yeah, God, like that is tugging on my heart, right? I'm sitting at this light and it's tugging on my heart, but I only got $5 left to my name and I don't get paid until tomorrow. Those are the situations that we are, breaking those bad habits, right? To stop being in those sort of situations and stop making excuses for why we're not obedient to God. Anything you want to say there? Because I feel like I said kind of a lot quickly.
Yeah, well, you came from I'll let you have the math side of it. You came from the number side. What I would say is I want to come from the health side and the mental side, because like we say, it's a lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. And this, you might not, well, I'm sure all of us have felt it. So I'm sure you can relate. Money is also connected to your health. And right now, like, stress is one thing that a lot of people don't know about. Even doctors, we see deaths, or you see sicknesses come up, or you see some sort of disease come up. And I don't have a degree, but I'm sure
you have a degree, just not in that.
Oh yeah. Well, I do have a degree, just not in the medical space. But I'm sure a lot of these unknown diseases, or even the ones that we do know, are triggered from stress. Mm-hmm. And we know that stress and finances are hand in hand. And so by doing these things, being in the green, just relieving your mind, so you can, one, sleep better, because we know that people do stay up thinking about, man, how am I going to how am I going to put food on the table? Or how you got kids, it's like, I don't even know what we're going to eat tomorrow. Or how I'm gonna pay my car, or hey, I'm two rents behind on, I might get an eviction notice tomorrow. Like, so we want, by doing these things, you can relieve yourself, which will also help your physical health, and we can hopefully help your body relieve it, or so that you don't get so stressed out. Because like I said, we know stress affects aging. It affects your weight. It affects, everything that you would do on a day-to-day. And again, on the mental, like we read about in the opening scripture, we want you to also be in a position that you're not doing something unrighteous, or you're not putting yourself in a situation where I'm about to go do something to make ends meet, or I'm about to put myself in a situation that I know this ain't right, but I can make $1,000, or I can, this is the only way I see it working. And that's the other part of it, that again, why they called it unrighteous wealth, because it drives you to do something that is either selfish, or it drives you to do something that you shouldn't be doing. So that's where I want to come with it, and that's also where it all ties together. And yeah, like we said, stress is a big issue, and we just want to relieve that stress. And you, by doing this, like I said, sleep better. Hopefully your day-to-day is better. Your relationship, I know, again, it's an issue within marriages, so hopefully it'll cause ease some tension there when you're, what's going on with your finances. Because we got enough issues going on, or having to worry about, or enough things coming up that we gotta fight. Finances is something that we can control, and there's a lot of things out there, so we can be ahead of it. So I'm always the person of like, let's control what we can, because there's a lot of unknowns or things that we can't control that we already have to fight against every day. So let's not make finances one of them. So like I said, you covered the math of it, stress, and the health part, it works hand in hand.
It does.
And like we said, lifestyle change, it's way more, but we'll stay here.
Yeah.
We'll stay here for today.
Yeah. And then the last thing was that each paycheck should have personal allowance, even if it's small. And so this kind of, I think this is important, right? Because we don't necessarily come from the throw all your money away and go eat out every day. We're very much so on the conservative side of that. But this is also for your benefit, even in a practical way, right? Like we've talked about the spiritual gain and building this muscle and building this discipline, but also from a very practical perspective, like it is okay for you to have money set aside for the things that you enjoy, right? And so, we always go back to the Starbucks drinks just because it's something that's like super, just common right now. But if you enjoy Starbucks, the fact that like there's always money set aside for that, if that's what you choose to spend it on, right? It's enjoyment, and that's okay, and that's a good thing, right? And we talked about even last time on a way different, in a way different way, that this walk, I don't know if people see it this way, but I feel like we know that this walk, there is enjoyment in it. There is, you look every day and it's just like, dang Lord, I see what you're doing. I see how you're growing me. I see, and it's just like, he wants us, God does not call, just because you're a Christian, I don't care what the world says, right? You are not supposed to be here just to be miserable every single day. Now you should be heavenly minded, kingdom minded, right? In all things. So when I'm at work, what's my real mission? I'm here doing X thing, but what's my real mission? Who needs to hear about Jesus, right? But also God, there's that scripture that says how much more, right? If you earthly fathers or parents can give good gifts, how much more, I being heavenly, and just thinking about God and how perfect and everything that he is, he wants us to also enjoy this, right? Walk with me. There's so much in that I want to give you and show you. And so that's probably a really in-depth way to basically just say, we want you to have a little bit of free money, what we call a personal allowance, every single paycheck. Again, just like the savings, doesn't matter if it's 5, 10, 50, right? But just to know that if you want X thing today, I can, within my budget, right, and within my personal allowance that I've already put a cap on, I can go do that. That matters. This is not supposed to be a miserable journey at all. So I don't know.
I was just gonna say, we're talking about the small things right now as far as a daily allowance and Starbucks and all that, and I'm sure we're probably gonna, hopefully it's on the schedule, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we also in my rubric of what I go with clients, there is a, we do a short-term and long-term goals, and I'm a firm believer on vacations. Like, vacations is something that you should take, because you should take breaks, and you should I call it true family time. And but with that vacation, not to go like just charge it up on a credit card, but how to properly save so that you can have a vacation and you don't have to worry about, man, while you're on vacation, I got $2,000 that I gotta, I can't even enjoy the vacation because my mind is, and even while we're here, no, we're just gonna stay in the room because we already gonna spend $2,000. So you can't even fully enjoy, not to get too much into it, because I know we'll probably talk about that at some point, but that, like you said, enjoying and really, like I said, it's not boring, or we're not called not to do those things, but there are ways that we can do it, and the responsible ways to do it. So again, from vacations to true family time, because the Bible does talk about family and kids and everything, and all of those things. So I'm sure that'll be on the schedule at some point.
Yep. All right, so that's really all we have. So again, we've covered a couple things. This was rearranging and prioritizing, and the next episode we'll talk about saving and kind of how to try to create a savings when it seems a bit difficult to see it.
Okay.
Awesome.